Welcome to today's Tech Solutions session, the ultimate enterprise campus recruiting enablement platform. It is my pleasure to turn it over to our session presenters.
Great, thank you so much. I am going to share my screen. My name is Jeanette Leeds-Meister, and I am the Managing Director and Head of Americas here at Olio. I am just trying to share my screen, which seems to not be cooperating, so just hang on one second. Let's see. Okay, I got it. Wonderful. Okay. Exciting. You got to love it. We're doing a tech solutions and now we got our tech working. So thank you guys for joining us. I'm going to talk about what we at Olio believe is the ultimate campus recruiting enablement platform. Again, as I had said, I'm Jeanette Leeds-Meister. You can find me online on LinkedIn and Twitter and other social media platforms. And just quickly by way of background, which hopefully you guys will find helpful, is, I head up Americas for Olio, and I've been with Olio for over 7 years. But prior to Olio, I actually was a customer twice, and I was really in all of your shoes. So I started out my career as a campus recruiter literally 20 years ago in the year 2000, and worked my way up from a campus recruiter to regional and then ultimately global leadership campus roles. So as we go through today's session, and today I'm here also with my colleague Ian, I wear the hat of, like, I've been in your shoes. I know the good, the bad, and the ugly, for better or worse. So hopefully that, gives you guys a little bit of, background there. As I think about our agenda for the next hour, and we're certainly going to leave time for Q&A. What I thought before we get into the fun, demo part and actually having Ian show you our technology is, I just sort of want to take like a step back, a little more high level, and talk about what we call recruiting enablement, and then really how we believe you can drive better outcomes through process and leveraging automation, in particular for campus recruiting. So I'm going to take a few minutes and just talk about that, and then I'll turn it over to Ian. But I think it's also important to acknowledge, listen, we're in a really, interesting, unusual, time period that we obviously have a lot of, economic uncertainty and fear, and it's, very unusual. And so, of course, recruiting is more challenging before, but we have this extra layer on top of it. And, we certainly want to recognize that, depending on where you sit, depending on your organization, you may have a full-on slowdown or hiring freeze. On the flip side, depending, your organization may be in a different industry where the opposite is happening. I actually hosted a webinar, I think it was a couple weeks ago now, and it was specific to campus recruiting. And I had campus recruiting leaders on, and I did a poll, and just from a statistics standpoint, which shouldn't be surprising, about 60% were having a slowdown in their campus recruiting efforts. And interestingly, there was 20% of the group that were continuing at the same pace prior to all of this, but 20% actually totally stopped altogether. So a lot of different changing, needs happening. The other piece that we see is, obviously within campus, we're always overburdened. Our recruiting teams are just, and yourself, if you're, on the line doing it, it's such an overburden. The big change that we've seen, obviously, in the couple of months is that, it's much more of an employer-led market versus a candidate-led one. And obviously for campus, changing everything from the internships, moving virtual, that is just such a change, and it's really put a lot of extra work on ourselves and our teams. And then I just also have to mention, D&I and diversity and inclusion. And over the past years, there's been a fantastic focus on that. as I talk to a lot of people, and we certainly read in the press, there's certainly a fear of sliding backwards. We look at unemployment rates, which obviously is a little bit different when we think of entry level, but unemployment rates in the US for women and people of color, are rising faster. And we combine that with everything that's going on with, focus on Black Lives Matter, which absolutely matters in the focus. And it's so incredibly crucial for us in our organizations really to ensure that there's not an unconscious bias in what we're doing, and really, understand the experience people are going through and have gone through. It's a challenge, but we have to rise to that occasion. So I just wanted to address that because, to have any sort of discussion, that all of these things are underlying it. The other piece I just need to, mention is I love stats. I'm a big statistics geek. And so I just wanted to mention, we recently published research with Aptitude Partners, which is fantastic. So any data or any stats that I throw out is from this research report, and you can find it on our Olio website as well. And, speaking of that, we use the term a lot at Olio, recruiting enablement. And I'm going to be using that term, and it's new to a lot of people. And if we think about a lot of enterprise organizations, they really will leverage sales enablement practices to be much more effective at reaching their customers and hitting sales goals. And you might be thinking, well, why are you talking about sales? I'm in recruiting. But just stay with me for a minute. What's interesting is that there's research that's been conducted, and sales enablement has an effective when an organization does it, it literally will lead to 2-digit improvements on their win rates for deals compared to organizations that don't have a sales enablement practice. And so what we believe is that you can literally apply these same principles and the results to talent acquisition. So organizations that really are leveraging a recruiting enablement practice, they are going to see improvements in efficiency and quality, because recruiting enablement really is going to take the guesswork out of what we're doing in talent acquisition, and really allow various companies to use data and insights to drive success. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more, and then Ian will bring it to life when he shows you the technology. But I think, this is so common, especially with campus recruiting, because for better or worse, we know there's time where we are very reactive. It has been the way of the world. And for us moving forward, to have, recruiting enablement, this really resolves a lot of the challenges at really the highest levels, whether it's aligning us with what, the business and recruiting goals, and really making improvements based on data and having a consistent process. So that really can help us move the needle from reactive to, that next level. And I told you I was going to talk to you about stats. So in Aptitude's report, we found that 63% said that quality of hire is the greatest challenge. But I want all of you guys to keep in mind that more than 80% say that quality of hire is a recruiting metric, not a hiring manager metric. And so what's happening is that talent acquisition leaders, whether you're focused on campus or early career or in general, they are held accountable for what happens beyond when a candidate accepts an offer. But there is no standard around measuring quality of hire. And, we know this, a lot of talent decisions are based on gut rather than data and insights. So I will say the good news, there is good news, because I'm not just going to give you some sort of, bad news. The good news is that 72% of enterprise companies say that using data to automate recruiting decisions is a priority in 2020. So that is really good. And it matters because Aptitude Research found that companies that use data to automate decision-making are twice as likely to improve the quality of hire. So again, bad news, but there is that light at the tunnel. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. I want to just touch quickly on the candidate experience, because even if you are in an organization where you are slowing down hiring or ultimately freezing, it's really important to continue to nurture your candidates in a way that's really specific to the candidate type. And we know that students need to be communicated in a different way than, experienced hires. And it's important to future-proof. And it was interesting because a week or so ago, I was hosting a roundtable, a campus recruiting roundtable, and I had on the global head of early careers and campus recruiting from Fidelity. And we started talking. We had both been doing, this since the downturn in 2008. For those who remember, I was actually at Lehman Brothers till the very, very end in the campus recruiting role. And it's really important for everyone to learn from the mistakes that were made in 2008. So a lot of campus recruiting stopped, and it was really difficult and expensive for organizations then to go back to various campuses and create that the connection with students, because the students felt burned. So it's really important to consider, if you're stopping developing your talent pipeline at that early level, the process will be more expensive when things pick up. So again, this nurturing, even if you have really slowed down, is really important for you to be considering and keeping everyone in your pipeline. And it's a similar thing where then you can drive better outcomes through process. And I just want to talk a little bit about the importance of tailoring and not having a one-size-fits-all recruiting process. So as an example, I think it's helpful to think about unqualified versus qualified candidates, especially for you guys, organizations that have a really large consumer brand. You may have candidates applying who love your company, they love your brand. And so it's really important and critical to let them down easy, to protect your brand. And you can really do that simply through automation of technology. But if you have, when you have those qualified candidates, the tippy top that you love and you want to get in, you need to pinpoint them really fast and fast track them to give your team more time to build the relationships with those students. And you have to ensure it's personalized. And again, you can do that with technology, and Ian will talk about that. But if you think about it, you could have one program, one type of internship, one type of role where you have, 4 different variations through digital stories. And it could be through gender, it could be through ethnicity, it could be through maybe geographies, it could be through schools. Again, you could have more than 4. We could go through a variety, but to me, that's really an important piece. And as I mentioned also before, listen, for campus recruiting, there's a huge admin burden. And, if I survey, you guys or your teams, we know campus recruiters spend a ton of time scheduling interviews and calls and, looking for candidates in the ATS and sorting. But we know we weren't hired, and you're not hiring people on your team for their administration skills. Ultimately, we hire people for their recruiting skills, to be strategic, to engage, to close the right candidates. Or I like to say, to me, that's the fun stuff. But, unfortunately, recruiting, we get stuck. Like, this is your day. Does this feel like your day? I know this is certainly my day when I was sitting in the campus seat. It still is at times. And we know this because there's so many steps in the recruiting process. We found that there was 91 steps. And so it's a huge admin burden. And so, Madeline and Aptitude had found that almost 60% of large enterprises have hired full-time interview schedulers on staff to address some of these, issues of spending tons of time. I think on average it was 16 hours per week. It takes, an average recruiter to schedule interviews. And right now, only 20% are using automation to help this. So again, lots of room for improvement. And when I think about this stuff, I laugh because literally back in 2000 at Lehman, we literally were hiring, schedulers to help us with interviews. And it's 20 years later, still a problem. So, the time is now to really, we can use automation and technology to help. And, thinking about, leveraging automation, and how we can overcome some of these issues. I just thought quickly, it's helpful for you to see some automations that some of our Olio customers are doing to enable these, efficient recruiting. And by the way, I like to think there's 2 types of automation. There's data-driven automation and templated automation. And both are really good and both have their place. So here's a sample of both. And to me, when I think about recruiting enablement, it can really automate a lot of these tactical tasks. and, create workflows and let recruiters focus on, the part of the job that, I was talking about earlier to create more value. And it really, recruiting enablement, in particular for campus recruiting, it ensures that candidates are not left behind or overlooked. And candidates have a really great, simple, intuitive experience. And that's so important because we know we get lots of volume of applicants. We don't want to have a black hole. We want to get back to all the candidates. So it's really, this is a really important piece. And let me just take a quick minute and give you an example of recruiting enablement with one of our customers, Bank of America, and how we help them. And so they had a challenge, and this, by the way, was before coronavirus, so this is going back a year. They were really losing out to a lot of startups. So candidates would receive either offers or just wouldn't even make it through the process because they were getting offers from, hip, cool startups in Silicon Valley. And so they needed to figure out a way to address that. And Bank of America really wanted to attract more candidates digitally, but keep that personal touch. And so instead of Bank of America coming to them, or the candidates coming to them, like Bank of America go to them digitally. And then diversity was critical because if they couldn't, if they didn't have a great candidate pool of diverse talent, obviously it makes it really difficult to hire the candidates if they're not even in the pool. And so they looked at their process and they said, you know what, let's change from face-to-face interviews and start doing video interviews as an example. Again, bringing the interview to the candidate, not the candidate to the interview. Again, this is all before, the environment we're in now. So in many ways, very forward thinking and helpful. And, the results were fantastic. They had, obviously they held tons of webinars. They touched more students than they had before, increased overall applications, which is huge. But for me, what was so important is they have these huge diversity improvements in their applications. If we look at these numbers, 57% increase in Hispanic applicants. I mean, huge increase, fantastic results. And they also were to they cut down that time to hire from 8 to 4 weeks. So cut it in half. So again, just a quick example of, some of these practices when they're put into place and the incredible results that can happen. I'm going to turn it over to Ian, but quickly, this is, our recruiting enablement platform. I like to say it is the ultimate, enterprise, platform for campus recruiting. There's 4 main products, recruit, engage, events, and insights, and we have intelligent automation throughout. And so Ian's going to give you a taste of, not everything. We'd be here for hours and hours because we have a lot of functionality, but just to give you a sense and hopefully in your head, breaks down the areas. So with that, I give you Ian Nadaraja, our Global Solutions Consultant, and someone I've been working with for over 10 years. So Ian, over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Jeanette. So just by way of introduction, guys, my name is Ian Nadaraja, as Jeanette mentioned, Global Solutions Consultant with Olio. I've been with Olio coming up to 13 years now, and in a couple of different roles. So initially I was an implementation consultant, actually working with lots of our large campus organizations, doing deployments, working with them on an ongoing basis. And then I moved over, well, not recently, about 5 years ago, moved over into a more sales role, conducting demonstrations and really showing the power of the Olio solution. In terms of today's demonstration, we're going to cover 3 areas. So we're going to start off from the perspective of a candidate at events, but also making applications for roles. We're then going to move on to the mobile experience available to anyone in your organization, really what I like to call recruiting on the go, giving you visibility of all your candidates and performing key actions. And then we're going to move into the more traditional interface, the recruiter experience, what I like to call mission control for all our different recruitment activities. But to get started, before we start with something a little bit interactive, and so on screen, Jeanette, if you just move to the next slide.
There you go, sorry.
We're going to invite you guys to participate in this activity, and imagine you are a candidate attending an event. Now, it could be a presentation, a career fair, an info session, and when you arrive at the event, you have the ability to either leveraging a QR code or text-back service, register your details using your own device. So you guys can do this. If you have an iPhone, maybe point your camera towards a QR code, a banner should appear. Clicking that banner will direct you to the registration interface. or of course you can use the word, text the word NACE20 to 41411. But at the point of doing that, you should be directed through to a registration interface, which allows you to, which should look very similar to what you're seeing on screen now. And this registration interface gives the candidates the ability to provide us any relevant information that we want to capture. In this example, we're asking the candidates some very basic information: first name, last name, email address, and area of interest. But you have the flexibility on an event-by-event basis, part of the earlier solution, to cater or amend the questions to suit the audience that you're going to engage with at that time. You can also capture, for in this example, location of interest, and as part of that process, also ask the candidate to provide us a copy of their resume. So we're seeing more and more candidates actually having access to their resume through their mobile device, either on the device itself or out there on the cloud. So candidates can browse out, find the appropriate resume that they want to attach, and then once they provide us all the relevant information, the candidate submits. So really simple and really easy for the candidate to provide us that relevant information. Now what's great here is at this point, the candidate is now invited to perform a next action, which is to schedule a time slot. But at the moment, because I, as a candidate, has indicated that I am interested in sales, I'm presented with an example of Adam Couch, head of sales at Olio, so I can learn more about the sales activities within Olio. So it really contextualizes the journey and shows an example of how we can contextualize the journey to your candidates. Based on their interest, based on how they progress through the workflow, we can present them with relevant content to keep them engaged, to help them to learn more about your organization. But at this point, as a candidate, I'm invited to schedule my time slot. I simply and easily click the button to schedule, and then I'm presented with available times that we have made available to our candidates. Really easy for a candidate at this point to just see those available times, select the time that best works for them, and then book in and receive on-screen confirmation. This can also be supplemented at any point through email and SMS communications as well to remind the candidate to engage them and keep them informed of where they are in the process. So really easy from an events perspective, capturing your candidates, but also continuing the activities with those individuals. What we're now going to do is move on and show you some other examples of the candidate experience. And we're going to move over to our desktop. And here we're directed to a portal which again is fully branded to match Olio's corporate brand. But when we work with our customers, we very much match their brands in the portals that we provide to them. And here, as a candidate, I can have the ability to have a look at the events that we're running, as well as the student opportunities that are available. So if I go to the events portal, I'm first presented with a list of all the events that the organization is running and the ability to search and find events that are of interest to me using a variety of tools, including keyword searching, including radius filtering, making it easy for me as a candidate to find an event that meets my specific criteria. If we move on to the student opportunities, we even make this even simpler, breaking it down from a candidate's perspective. What type of role are they interested in? Are they interested in an internship or a full-time opportunity? Clicking on the relevant one will then keep the candidate informed around the offering around the internship in this example, what to expect, and also the different departments and locations that are available to them as part of this offering. Candidates at this point can decide if they want to apply, and there's the ability to leverage social tools here to get this role out there to their peers and increase your visibility. At the point of application, the first thing that the candidate is presented with is pre-screening questions. And these pre-screening questions are designed to set the minimum expectations from the candidate and make sure this is the right candidates getting through to this point. So in this example, are they in their second or penultimate year of study? Candidates who are successful at this point are then taken through to the login or registration screen. So as new candidates able to create a profile, as existing candidates able to log into their profile. Regardless of who they are, they have the ability to leverage social tools to speed up that process. The likes of Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, etc. can be leveraged to make that process easier and even populate information into the candidate's application. But at the point of logging in, we're directed straight through to the application form. And the beauty here is the application form, guys, can be as long or as short as you need it to be. We've actually developed best practice campus application forms that our customers adopt as a way of giving easy comparisons of data and doing consistent reporting, but you can decide how these pages are structured, the order, and also which questions are mandatory and which questions aren't, with drop downs, radio buttons. You have full flexibility in terms of the content and display of the form itself. In this example, we're capturing information, first of all, personal information of the candidate. We're then moving on to capture information on the candidate's preferences, in this case, both business areas that they're interested in and locations, and then capture information around the candidate's education, both previous university, current or previous education, as well as current university, and the ability to capture the candidate's work experience and additional documents should we wish. The candidate has visibility of where they are in the process and how much more questions they need to complete through the progress tracker on the left-hand side. And once the candidate has completed the full application, they're directed to the declaration page where they're able to submit their registration. And at the point of submission, they're directed through to the communication center. At the point of submission, the system starts to make decisions on your candidates. First of all, do they meet the minimum eligibility for the role? And then if they do, where should they go to next? And in this example, directing through to the communication center, the variety of actions that are available to your candidates. So in the communication center, it supports your candidates having visibility of where they are in the process, but also being able to take self-service activities. In this example, being able to take an assessment. Many of our customers will leverage assessments as well as video interviewing as a way of supporting that initial screening of candidates. Olio has its own assessment engine, but also integrates with the world-leading providers in assessments as well. Fast forwarding further down in the process, we want to maybe perhaps invite the candidate through to interview. Again, through the communication center, candidates can be invited to schedule for their interviews. And actually this is a self-service tool for your candidates to simply and easily come through, look at the available times that we have made available to the candidate, and then book into that time. And again, receive that on-screen confirmation. Now, because this is a virtual interview, we can even provide the candidate with automated links so that they can actually start their virtual interview at the right time. Moving further in the process and thinking about the later stages of the process when we want to extend offers to candidates, we have the ability to extend offers through the communication center. Here's also an example of how we can contextualize the journey, in this case, presenting a congratulation message from our very own Jeanette and encouraging the candidates to accept offers with the organization. But through the communication center, candidates can have real-time visibility of details that have been extended to them and actually respond to those offers as well, either positively or negatively, with the system then triggering on additional questions as a result. So for example, if they accept an offer, we might want to start to ask them onboarding questions, but also if they decline an offer, then we might want to start to ask them reasons why they're declining and who else they've received offers from. In particular, if you think about what Jeanette was talking about earlier, our customers are using that information to inform their decision-making process and to change their strategies in the changing world that we're working in now. So that's really an example of the candidate experience at our Whirlwind tool. What we're now going to do is just move into the mobile experience and show you examples of the Olio mobile app. Now, the mobile app is available to anyone in the recruitment team, whether that be a recruiter, whether that be a hiring manager, whether that be an ambassador involved in the process. And the key thing here is you have visibility of key areas of your recruitment process, both on your candidates, your events, your vacancies and programs, as well as your interviews. If we first go into an event, what we're able to see is key information about the event itself initially. Now, this is actually an interface where we could turn this tool into a kiosk, a candidate-facing tool, to support the registration or checking in of candidates should they not have their own device with them, or perhaps where there's internet issues. So there's a safety net here to support you capturing those registrations. But thinking about from a manager's perspective, I can have visibility of all the candidates who have registered for my events. At any point, I'm able to dive into those candidates, where as I'm interacting with the individual, I'm able to see key information about them, as well as use information from their resume to further supplement my understanding. Not only can I do that, but as I'm talking to the candidate, I'm able to provide feedback. And we give you the option to provide feedback in a number of different ways. Thumbs up, thumbs down, the ability for you to leverage comments, but but also the ability to leverage a more structured evaluation form as well. So depending on the type of event that you're running, depending on the audience that you're engaging with, you have different options on how you can capture feedback and get your managers to really have flexibility in how that feedback is captured, increasing that feedback rate. If we now go into having a look at a particular vacancy, we can actually start to have visibility of where all our applications are at any point. So from a recruiter's perspective, very helpful in understanding our pipeline, very helpful in terms of understanding what actions we need to perform. If we flip back and think about it from a hiring manager's perspective again, the interview tile becomes increasingly important as a way of giving me quick visibility of the candidates that I'm going to interview. Switching into my interview tile allows me to see all the upcoming interviews that I have, and actually, if they are virtual interviews, give me the ability to quickly launch those video interviews as well. Again, I'm able to dive into those candidates at any point, able to see more information about those candidates, and in this example, seeing information around when they're going to be interviewed, but also have a different evaluation form, in this example, focused on specific competencies that we want to evaluate the candidate against. So there's real flexibility within the Olio solution in terms of the workflows you have available and in terms of the types of evaluation forms you want to present to your internal stakeholders. What we're now going to do, guys, is just quickly move on and show you the recruiter interface of the solution, really what I like to call mission control for all our different recruitment activities. And when we log into the recruiter interface, the first thing to mention is each user, when they log in, is presented with a number of different tabs, allowing them to have visibility of key areas of their recruitment process. Each tab is made up of these widgets, and these widgets really give us an understanding of key information that we are interested in as an individual. We have the ability to personalize these widgets to make sure they are relevant to us as individuals, to make sure we're seeing information that helps us on our daily journey. So the first thing we're going to do is actually go through and have a look at a series of candidates that we need to screen. Clicking the screening candidate button takes me through to this list of candidates and provides me a contextual view where I can learn more about my population. Before we go into what's on screen, just to introduce this interface to you, this is what we call the bulk screen. For me, a really important area of the solution where we're able to gain lots of efficiencies. And when I speak to our customers, an area where they're actually able to save a lot of time and money in terms of managing the volumes of applications they're receiving. Through Olio's intelligent automation and bulk capabilities, our customers report on average a 40% reduction on time to administer their candidates. In this example, we come through to a list of candidates that we need to screen. And a recruiter would traditionally need to look at a multitude of different data points to make a screening decision. They could look at information such as the candidate's university, the degree that they've achieved, the results, the awards that they may have achieved during their academic lives, the employment experience that they have, were they referred, what online test scores did they receive, what locations are they interested in, what language skills that they have. This is just a subset of the types of data points that recruiters would typically need to look at to make a good hiring decision. Now, in this example, there's over 420 candidates in our population. So you can imagine that's a significant time that it takes our recruitment team to get through this population just to understand who we want to take through to the next stage. We think there's a better way, a more efficient way of doing this. What we've developed at Olio is our intelligent recommendation. And what it does is it looks at automatically over 120 different data points and gives your recruiters a recommendation on, are we likely to want to continue engaging with this candidate? We can use that information to further filter down and focus on a particular population, where we're then able to use some of our bot functionality to continue that interaction. So here we've gone down from those 420 candidates to 37 that we really want to focus on. We can select all these individuals in bulk and then decide if we want to leverage any one of our bulk functionalities, whether that be adding them to a specific CRM campaign, whether it be progressing the candidates through the workflow, issuing ad hoc communications, both through SMS, both through email, the ability to move candidates to other roles, update information against candidates, bulk invite them through to interview, complete forms against candidates, print out their applications, download their information out to Excel. Lots and lots of bulk actions to help you drive your efficiencies, to help you focus on the right candidates first. But as well as giving you the ability to manage those candidates in volume, we can also manage those candidates individually. Here we're focused on an individual candidate, and going into their individual record, we're able to be presented straight away with key information about this individual. But the first thing we're presented with is a summary of key information about the candidate, as well as contextual buttons that guide us as to what the next logical actions are. So particularly if we are engaging our hiring managers in the process, these contextual buttons can be very helpful in helping them to understand where is the next stages for the candidate, where can we move the candidate to. We can also have visibility of the candidate's other applications. So we start to get transparency around all our interactions with this candidate and where they are in the recruitment process. In particular, we can see here for one of the applications, the candidate is scheduled for second round interview. If we dive into that application, we'll notice first of all that the contextual buttons now change. So again, depending on where we are in the candidate journey, depending on who we are as an individual, contextual buttons are there to guide us as to where to move the candidate to next. But in this example, going into the interview tab, we can have visibility of the interviews that the candidate is involved in. The Olio solution actually supports you with any type of interview that you need to run. Virtual interviews, ad hoc conversations with candidates, one-to-one interviews, assessment centers or super days. Regardless of the interview type that you need to run, the system will support you with that. In this example, we're going into an assessment day where the candidate's actually been invited to undertake a number of different activities. Here we actually have transparency of all those activities and create time slots within those activities that we can link together to form an itinerary. So at the point of a candidate being booked into a time slot, they can actually have visibility of who they're meeting, when they're meeting, what activity they're involved in. Similarly, your internal stakeholders or your attendees within these interviews can be communicated with through iCal invitations, and your candidates will also receive notifications via email to remind them that they have an interview scheduled. We've seen this being particularly successful in reducing the dropout rates in some of our customers by up to 40%. Now, in order to further support your business in understanding the candidates that they're engaging with and giving them more information about the candidates that they're going to meet, there's supporting documentation that can also be generated. This includes individual summaries that allow you to share information around who you're meeting, when you're meeting them, and what activity they're involved in. And these can be generated both for your internal stakeholders as well as your candidates. And there's also the ability to generate resume books. These resume books, generated in the order that you're going to interview your candidates, provide you a summary of key information about the candidate that you're going to meet, whilst also giving you the ability to include information such as the candidate's resume or cover letter to further keep our business members informed on the candidates that they're engaging with. The final thing I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about is really our insights technology. And we developed some insights technology that really focuses around diversity to give organizations insights into key metrics that they want to measure. If we first look at our diversity pipeline, we're brought through to a list of all our applications, and what we're able to see is at any point how many applications are at each stage, and actually at each stage how many candidates are in progress, been successful, been rejected, or withdrawn, which is really helpful for us to understand our high-level funnel. But we're able to also apply filters at this point. And at this point, we're going to focus on diversity, and in particular, look at the ethnicity of these candidates. And we start to get further insights into our data. If we dive into a particular stage in the process, let's say our interviews and assessments, we can focus on our different ethnic groups and start to see how they're performing. So we can see at a glance for white candidates, there's a fairly even split in terms of the number of candidates that are progressing through and being rejected at this stage. But if we focus on our Black or Asian candidates, we actually can see there's a high proportion of these candidates being rejected or dropping out at this stage in the process. So the data that we're able to give you gives you an insight into your recruitment process and allows you to say, hey, what are the factors that are going into this? Are these stages in our process potentially biased? what can we do to adjust this in our recruitment process? So that's really all we wanted to cover off today. I think over to the NACE team for questions.
Okay, well, this is Jeanette still from Olio, and I actually am seeing we have some questions that are coming in from the chat that NACE is putting in for us. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to read some of them out loud, and between Ian and myself, one of us will answer them. So, but, you know, thank you, Ian, for going through that. I mean, hopefully for everyone, you know, that brought to life some of the recruiting enablement pieces that I was talking about at the beginning. I mean, to me, you can absolutely see the power. And, you know, we have here as our, you know, tagline, you know, your recruiting force multiply. You can see how pretty quickly it's just, you know, you can multiply what you're doing and just be incredibly efficient with, you know, from a data and automation standpoint. So with that, okay, we got some questions. So let's see. First question says, hi, how would you start the process if you're not at a face-to-face event to give them the code or to text to register? What are the best practices to get the registration link out? So this question must have come at the very beginning, Ian, when you were going through that QR code and the text. So do you wanna take that? Because I know you get that question a lot.
Absolutely. And the answer is these QR codes and text-back service can easily be presented online. So many of our customers are putting this at slides at the beginning of their presentations, or just on the screen itself when the candidates are arriving for those virtual sessions, so that those candidates can, using the QR code, using the text-back service, or even presenting a link or sending a link in the chat to direct the candidates to register.
It's great. The other thing, actually, I've also seen, I was talking about when I was at that roundtable last week, was some organizations are taking that if they're doing any digital ads, which I know a number of organizations are starting to look at as well. So they're starting to then do that. Which I always think is an interesting way. Again, it gets people like registering, whether it's for events or for you know, an actual program or internship or full-time job. And so there's a lot of different ways, you know, once you have whether that's QR code or the you know, the text or anything, you know, you can get that out there through a variety of channels, whether that's paid or organic, social or not. So just adding a little bit of flavor there. Okay, let's see. We have another question that came in. It says, at what point do you ask about their self-reported diversity ethnicity? Ian, you go with that and I'll add some flavor as needed.
And the answer is, from a technology perspective, we're very flexible. So you can ask it up front. You can ask it at later stages in the process. And we do see our customers generally ask those questions up front. We obviously reassure the candidates that there's no impact on the selection process. And actually, from a recruiter's perspective, we can restrict visibility of that data against the individual candidates to ensure there's no bias going into the selection process. So very much is a case that we can capture the information up front, but we also do see customers asking it later on in the process as well. So you do have ultimate flexibility there.
Which is great. And we're all really about that flexibility, which I think is, you know, for me, when I was looking, you know, over the years at different campus recruiting technology, you know, whether I was at Lehman, again, so many years ago, and then I was at Credit Suisse, it was that flexibility to match, you know, the different, you know, recruiting processes, because we know campus is different. And so, you know, you may want to change that for, not just campus, but within what you're doing, as I spoke about earlier. So if you find that, you know, depending on your different, you know, roles, jobs, and what, you know, programs, intern, depends where you are. For those that are in global roles, you know, very different types of ways of looking at this, and, you know, US versus Europe versus Asia, you know, so, you know, that flexibility is really key. Okay, so I'm seeing I have a note from NACE that's coming through the chat, is that, if anyone else has any other questions, definitely put it in the chat right now. Otherwise, we'll sort of move to end it. I think while we're waiting for any questions, maybe, Ian, if you could just move to the next slide. We have some resources for you. So in addition to the Aptitude Partners research report I mentioned with Madeline that we did, that's on our website, olio.com. A few others that we just wanted to highlight as well, that again, you can find on our website. And I think this recording and slides are going out to you as well. But again, you can find it on our website. We have a case study that goes into a little more in depth of what I've talked about with Bank of America and what they're doing with campus recruiting. And obviously, you saw the fantastic results. There's also this white paper around, if you're thinking about, listen, we all are right now, right? Because everything's changed to virtual. But if you're thinking about your campus recruiting events and their effectiveness, we have a white paper there to help you as you think about what's going to be happening in the next number of months as, things evolve. So hopefully that will be a good resource. And then also just, the last one is around high volume recruiting. And for me, the term high volume, a lot of people think about that being retailers and organizations of that nature. But the fact of the matter is, for us in campus recruiting, so many organizations that we work with or talk to are effectively doing high volume recruiting with huge number of applications coming in, or a huge number of hires, or both. And so, there's a lot of, similarities there. So that's another really great resource. Okay, so let me go over to the chat and see. Okay, so from Nick at NACE, saying NACE values your feedback and contributions. Take time to fill out the brief survey that you're going to get following today's webinar. So I guess that will hit your inbox. So definitely, let us know, and not just NACE, but we do as well. I always say feedback is a gift. I mean, people laugh at me, but it's really the only way to improve. You don't know what you don't know, so let us know how we can, improve. We love that, so definitely fill out that survey from NACE. And if there's no other questions, I think we're good. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate the time. Hope this was valuable. Again, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to come back and watch it. We are here for you if you have further questions, want to dive in deeper to any of the tech that we showed you, just want to talk about campus recruiting and best practices. I'm here, Ian is here, the rest of Team Olio is here. You can find us online on our website. And with that, I will say stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, and enjoy as much as you can during this interesting time. And a huge thank you for NACE for having us today. We very much appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you to Jeanette and Ian for a very informative session. And thank you, participants, for attending today's session. This officially concludes the webinar, and you may now sign off.